Have you guys ever had any PR questions or wanting to know how to even get started? I am the first to admit I am not an expert. And so I was able to get my good friend, Amy Rosenfeld, who is a PR expert, to chat with me for about 30 minutes on all the things public relations, how to get your name out there, how to send a press release, how to start making relationships. So check it out below. She gives incredible insights, actionable to-dos. And if you're in the nonprofit space and just don't have the capacity to either hire a position to do that or hire on a consultancy, this is going to be game changing. I hope you enjoy.
Hi, Amy.
Yes,
Thank you so much for doing this with me.
of course, my pleasure.
I'm happy to introduce you guys to my dear friend and former coworker and fellow mama, Miss Amy Rosenfeld. She is our resident PR expert, and I'm super excited to do today's little interview session because I admittedly know nothing about nothing, maybe like 1% of all things PR related. And it just recently came up where I was on like a frantic text message chain with Amy trying to answer all the things. And I thought, if I'm having this question after doing this work for 13 years and other people have this question, there's probably lots of people wondering, what is the thing with public relations? How does it work for my nonprofit? I'm a one-person show, and I just need to know basics, simple, make it easy stuff. So thank you for being here. So Amy, I'm going to stop talking for a second, and why don't you tell me a little bit about you, how you got into this work, so everyone can get to know you a little better.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jess. So hi, everyone. Really happy to be here. So again, my name is Amy Rosenfeld, and really for the last 15 years of my career, I have been helping nonprofit organizations through expert storytelling, strategic communications, and marketing. I'm super passionate about helping nonprofit causes that I believe in, elevating their work through various means. Public relations is a really important one of them. And public relations can encompass a lot of things, but I think here for this conversation, we're talking specifically about media relations, which I'm happy to talk about. And it's something I am very comfortable with, and I've been really doing pretty intently for the last 8 years of my career.
Awesome. Oh, so glad you're here. You're going to teach us all the things. Okay, so to kick us off, give us the basics. PR 101. What is it? When and why should nonprofits be using it? Let's start with that. Let's kick us off.
Okay, so like I said earlier, public relations can encompass a couple different things, but really the
Right.
goal is positive publicity about your organization.
Yeah.
And I think really for your audience here, we're talking about communicating with the public, which could be donors, right? First and foremost,
Yeah.
we want to talk to supporters and we want to talk to volunteers.
Right. Yeah.
So positive publicity can accomplish a lot of things, but namely, we're trying to get a message about the impact of an organization out into the community, create buzz, right? And really, donors and supporters and volunteers get really excited when they see a great story written up about your organization. So it's a great way to fundraise. It's a great way to build momentum and to tell those unique stories about your organization.
Right. Totally. Okay, so let's pretend I'm a executive director of a super small nonprofit and I maybe have one or two staff persons, but maybe I'm me, myself, and I trying to do all the things. What are one or two ways that I can just get started with, you said, talking publicity, getting our name out there? I think for this audience, that's really what people are looking for, especially when they're either a new organization or a small organization.
Absolutely. So there's a couple steps that you can take. And again, these are, I think, fairly simple things that anyone could do. So first, you need to have your messages written down on a fact sheet. So, many of us are familiar with like annual reports and things that might be lengthier, but that's not necessarily something that you're going to want to give to the media. Because when you think about people working in the media, whether they're reporters or writers, they're really busy and they get a lot of information sent to them. And so you want to make sure that you've done your homework and that you have your resources ready. So when they ask for that background information, you have it at the ready. Okay. So think about first creating some very simple fact sheets. So maybe it's your annual report and you're kind of distilling it down into some very quick and easy to digest bullet points about your organization. So you want to make sure you include your mission statement, your website, your social media handles. Okay. And then maybe the history of the organization, perhaps some notable board members. You might want to include your list of board members.
Great.
And then if you've been around for a couple years and you have some successes, include those bullet points, number of people served. Maybe you got a significant grant or funding recently that you want to talk about, include that. And then perhaps a couple testimonials. If you're a direct service organization, it's really important to include voices from the people that you're serving. So create a fact sheet like that. Maybe it's 1 or 2 pages, PDF form. You can add a little bit of graphic design to it, make it visually interesting, great. But if it's just a simple Word document, that's totally fine too. So you have that information, great. Okay, first step. Second step, who do you want to reach out to?
Totally.
So we were talking earlier about media people. Who are the media people?
I know, because I feel like that's like what they call them, but I don't know if that's like a word they reference. I don't know. So who are these people?
Who are these people? So let's start kind of small. Let's start local. Okay. So you're working in the community. Who are the local reporters and local writers? So perhaps there are some local papers, some community newspapers, community magazines. Maybe there's like a community blog. Find out and just some internet sleuthing. That's how you do it. Okay. Also local radio.
I love being a professional stalker, by the way.
Yes, and that's what it is. And that's really how I've done it. Okay. So just some professional stalking. Figure out those local reporters that are covering your beat. Okay. So if your organization is working on environmental issues, you can be sure that there are reporters and writers that are covering environmental issues in your community. So you're going to want to start stalking them. Okay. So get their email, their website, their social media handles, and start keeping an Excel list of who those people are. Okay. So start small.
Great.
And
sorry, can I interject with a question on that? I think sometimes, at least with organizations or people in the nonprofit space that I work for, they feel like they need to go for the big guns, right? Like the New York Times of the wherever they are or whatever. And when you talk about media people, and maybe you are going to get to this, I mean, should that be the goal, or should it just be an intermix, or like more the merrier, or actually start at your local community paper, radio show?
So I think I think that you need to narrow the scope a little bit when you're first starting off. Perfect. So if you haven't had a lot of experience working with the media, developing a relationship with a reporter, which I'd like to get into, kind of learning how to share your story in a public way, I would recommend, keeping the People magazines and the New York Times off on kind of the pie in the sky. That can come later, and that should absolutely be part of your list when you're reaching out to the media. But know that every other person and their mother is going to be trying to pitch People magazine and the LA Times and New York Times. So I think that as a practice to kind of develop your own PR skills, start local.
Great. Okay. Super helpful.
Okay. Where were we? So
we're talking about the fact sheet, and we were talking about all the good things, and then we were talking about how we get that into the hands of these mythical media people.
Yes, mythical media people. So you're going to have your list, and you're going to want to also separate it. I would create a column that's like, whether it's a print publication, whether it's an online blog, a community newspaper, a radio station. Also, don't discount like your local NPR affiliate. It's a great place to get publicity. They great stories, not just audio, radio, but they'll usually accompany it with an online article as well. So make a list of all of these places. And then the next goal, of course, is, okay, what do we want to communicate? Is there an event coming up? Are we having an event that we want to invite media to?
Right.
Or is it just, we want to have just a great story about our organization? Maybe you're nearing the end of the year and you have some great stats to share out. So you kind of need to figure out what the opportunity is.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you just give, like, you don't have to name the organizations, but maybe like some real life tactical ways you've done this, maybe in the last 12 months, like with organizations? Has it been like a ribbon cutting, or I am trying to think of when it's maybe just a more general donation time and you're just trying to, like, what are some things?
Yes, as some events. So if you if you're opening like a new center, perhaps,
Yep.
right? Or a new building where there's an actual ribbon cutting, that's a fantastic opportunity to invite the media. You definitely want to do that. You're going to have donors, you'll have volunteers, you'll have staff there. So you'll definitely want to invite members of the media. That's a great thing.
Yep. What about if it's something like, I don't know, like you just have like something's crossed your desk and it's just like an amazing, heartwarming story. Like it's nothing time specific. It just happened to have happened. What about something like that?
Absolutely. So I think that goes back to your media list. So you're going to figure out who is covering what. So if it's a local news reporter, for example, that's going to be the very timely pieces. You're not going to have a lot of turnaround time to make that happen. So that's great when you have an event, a time specific event, your deadline that you're working towards. Okay. But if it's a writer for like a local paper that's covering more community-based organizations and impact stories and really looking for those kind of like impactful stories that really move people, that is a fantastic opportunity to build a relationship with that reporter. And know that that's not necessarily time sensitive. So you can actually take the time developing that story and getting all the players in place and then reaching out to the reporter. Inviting that reporter, I would recommend when you're doing outreach, see if that reporter is open to taking a tour of your organization, sitting down for coffee. It's the same thing that you would do with a donor or a potential supporter. You're building that relationship. You're inviting that writer or reporter into your organization, providing them a glimpse of the different programs and services you offer. And then that reporter is going to figure out what piques their interest. So you might have one goal in mind and definitely share that impact story, but they might find another aspect of your organization more interesting.
Fascinating. I never, ever, ever thought that. I mean, once again, relationship building is at the root of it all, right? And so, I mean, you literally just like cracked open something because I just never ever thought about that. I mean, but it makes total sense. And it also makes, when you do have an opportunity to share, someone to actually bite at your opportunity more likely when they've actually sat down to either get to know you or your organization. So, okay, that so helpful. And knowing that you can do that on a super local level is, I think, way less intimidating than trying to find like the hot shot reporter at, the LA Times or whatever.
And that's what I mean by starting small. Start small, build up your confidence, get some of those great articles or pieces, and you'll get more comfortable. You'll work that muscle. And then you might want to go for the pie in the sky. You might want to pitch the New York Times or People magazine. It can be done. It does happen. I just think it's better to kind of start small and see what you can do. We talk about low-hanging fruit with donors. Start with the low-hanging fruit. And also in terms of not feeling intimidated, I think remembering that reporters and writers and members of the media, they have an insatiable need for stories.
Totally.
You have those stories.
Thousands.
Right? You know your organization inside and out. You have those impact stories. So remember that when you're meeting with them, you have a need for publicity, but they have a need for stories.
Love that. Love that. So good. Okay, so we've talked about what we should send them. We've talked about who these people are, but let's get a little bit more concrete, specifically around media advisories and press releases. I know that there's probably a professional format and system? I know you said some are more kind of fast turnaround than others. So let's get nitty gritty on what should be included, who should be included, everything.
Absolutely. Okay, so yeah, so two pieces that you should be very familiar with, and you can also find a lot of templates online on how to do this, is a press release and a media advisory. Some people confuse the two, but they're actually have serve different purposes.
Oh,
Okay.
who knew?
Yes. So, so when we talked about in a specific event, like a press conference, a ribbon cutting, an event, a media advisory is going to be the best vehicle to use. A media advisory is almost, think of it like an event invitation. It's going to be really brief. There's going to be a title, like what the event is. It's going to have a paragraph about what the event is all about. And then it's going to be the who, what, when, where, why, RSVP. It's going to be one page. It's going to be really brief and factual. And that is something that you're going to want to send in advance of an event. Now, there's no like hard and fast rules on when to send these things, but I would say generally speaking, about a week in advance.
Okay.
And then you're going to want to send it 2 days before and then the morning of.
Okay.
So you're going to feel like you're being annoying, but you're not.
No.
You're just know that you're going to be competing with a lot of other people for their attention.
Totally. My dad always says, like, the person that keeps calling me is the person that gets my business, because when I happen to remember to pick up, they're the one.
Yes.
So I never feel bad about follow-up, and I actually think that people don't do it nearly enough.
Yes.
Okay, so that is media advisory, which is separate from press release.
Yes. So a press release is more of your softer sort of long form. Okay. So a press release could be 1 to 2 pages. You're still going to have, your contact information at the top, a title, a subheading, but then you're going to have more of a narrative. Okay. So perhaps you're announcing a particular piece of funding that the organization just got. Okay. A big grant, or maybe a new person has joined your board of directors, or you've hired a new CEO or senior staff member. A press release is a great way to get that information out. And you're going to want to not only, of course, describe the great thing that just happened at your organization, but perhaps include a quote or two from the person that's joining the organization or from the CEO.
Got it.
Okay.
Super helpful.
And at the end of your press release, you're always going to want to include a little, what I like to call, media people call a boilerplate, which is just, a summary of the organization, your mission statement, and your website. Okay. To make sure you always include your contact information.
Okay.
And so, a press release is not always going to be picked up by the media. Okay. A press release, however, when you're sending that out, it could invite a reporter or a writer to contact you to learn more about your organization.
Okay. Got it.
I also sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, so a press release seems like something you frankly maybe have more control over, in the sense that, like, a press release is a longer document with more information that, like, you can, yes, send to media people, but you could also post that to your website. You could
Absolutely.
send that to your email list. You could put that on your company's LinkedIn page. Like, that's something that you can move forward, where a media release is too short and
Correct.
makes no sense.
Correct. That's absolutely right. I would recommend that your website have like a news section if you don't already have it, and a press release is a great thing to publish on there. And then to be able to, send out through Twitter, send out through Facebook or Instagram. And getting back to the contact list that I talked about. So you're going to have your list of media people, and you're going to have their social media handles.
Yeah.
So after you send out your press release, if you're going to also push that out on your own social media channels, you're going to want to tag some of those key reporters as well. I've worked with a lot of reporters that are so busy that don't even check their email, but they do use social media.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
can we just go to some logistics around the press release? Like, how in advance do you send that? You've already covered, you send it to the same list of people, but they may or may not check the email. So
if you're sending, there's a couple ways you could do it. A press release is often sent on the day of the announcement. So if you're announcing, right, that like a new center is opening, or that somebody has joined your board of directors, you'll actually send it out the day of, because again, it's not tied to a specific event. Okay.
Right.
If you want to increase your chances of it being picked up in the media, you could send it a few days before. And on the press release, you're going to want to write in really big, bold letters and highlight, hold until X date. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. So you're just giving them a heads up that this is happening, but that you want this particular announcement to be held until a certain date.
Okay, I have a really nitty gritty. This is like how granular, at least I know nothing about. So, assuming either media releases or press releases for the most part are being sent over email, is that a correct assumption?
Yes.
How important is the subject line? Does the subject line need to match the title? Any tips for subject or title lines?
That's a great question. So subject line should really reflect whether it's a press release or a media advisory. So subject line so if you're sending a media advisory, it should be media advisory in the subject line, and then the title.
Got it.
If it's a really long title, shorten it, keep it brief.
Okay.
But you definitely want to include that. And the same thing goes for a press release, title. Hopefully the title includes the name of the organization that you work for.
Got it. Okay. That is again, so helpful.
Yes, no, I mean, this granular information is really important. I totally get it. And then the subject of the body of the email, I would attach the press release or media advisory as a PDF, but also copy and paste the text into the body of the email.
Got it. Because people, if they're unlikely to open emails, they're probably less likely to open attachments.
Correct.
Okay, so helpful. Okay, so we've covered what a press release is. We've covered what a media advisory is. We've talked about who these people we are that are sending it to. Am I forgetting anything on like the nitty gritty of these kind of products? I think we've talked about finding them, building relationships with them.
Yeah. No, I think I would just add, I think some people have questions about whether posting their press release to like PR Newswire or some of these. So a lot of these are subscription based and they're not cheap. So I think if it's in your budget to do it, that's another way to get your message out for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of it comes back to rolling up your sleeves, finding out who the people are that you want to connect with, emailing them again, following up with phone calls. And just know that if you are trying to get local broadcast media, those are the local, affiliate stations. So your NBC, ABC, CBS, Fox News, all of those local affiliate stations to attend an event, know that they start working at like 4:30 in the morning. And there's the 24-hour news cycle. So things move very, very quickly in that world. So you're going to want to follow up to make sure you're going to call their news desk, call the day before the event, make sure that they got your media advisory. And then the morning of, wake up, grab a cup of coffee at 5 a.m. and start making phone calls.
Okay.
Because somebody will always be at that news desk to be able to answer the phone. Okay. Make sure you give them your cell phone number as well, because what they'll likely do, because they're going to have reporters out in the field, they're going to call you and say, is this event still happening at 10 a.m.? I have a reporter who's going to want to attend.
So if I'm up at 5 a.m. with my cup of tea, because you know me and my addiction and aversion for coffee. So I call the desk and I'm literally like, hey, I'm Jess from so-and-so organization. I sent you this media advisory. Just want to make sure you got it.
Absolutely. And and the person who answers, this happens so many times, will say, oh, great. Why don't you send it to me personally? Here's my personal email.
And then you're like, yeah,
and then you're like,
golden ticket. Okay, cool.
Yes.
Okay, good. I had no idea. Okay, cool.
And then also I will just add, and I've had this happen, just so, to keep your expectations in check with broadcast news. I have planned press events and had a number of local media planning to attend, and then something really big happens, right? We're in the 24-hour news cycle. Everything is breaking news these days, and your event gets bumped.
Yeah.
And it's really disappointing, but just know that it can happen, it will happen, and there's nothing you can do to prevent it.
That's really, really good. A reminder. We should like underline that. Yeah. It's not
Yes,
you. It's just, it's the news.
it's just the way it is. Yeah.
Okay. So then let's talk about what are some no cost, low cost ways to do PR for your organization? Is there anything else besides these two tactics? Is there any way to be doing public relations on your social media? I don't even know
Yes.
what there is.
So social media is a key component of any public relations plan.
Yeah.
Okay. So first, when you're working with the media and say you are lucky and you do get a great piece printed, or there's you're on the radio, you're on NPR, whatever it is, you can then share these things on social media, right? Like that's the best part of having a win, of having a something published, is you get to share it.
Yeah.
To share it with your donors. You can print it out, include it in an appeal letter,
Yeah.
send it in an e-newsletter, post it to your website, post it to your social media. But it's also okay if you haven't been able to accomplish having something published in the media, you can do your own PR. Okay. So you can work with your local staff, get those really amazing, compelling stories of impact, hire a photographer, get a great photo and a brief story. If you have a graphic designer that can produce something that's like visually interesting, and then you can publish it to your Instagram, you can publish it to
Right.
Facebook, you can put it on LinkedIn. You
Right.
can still do public relations, right, and public affairs by having those impactful stories that are published on all of your social media properties and your website. And you should be doing that really on an ongoing basis.
Yes.
And again, you can also use those stories and include those wins and those compelling stories in your pitches when you're reaching out to members of the press and members of the media.
Totally. Let's talk about this self publication a little bit more. I am probably I'm like the biggest fan of consistency. And so can you tell us, like, in terms of a frequency, what any kind of best practice is? It's obviously dependent on capacity. So,
Absolutely.
you know, there's some organizations out there with entire teams around this that can be updating websites and blog posts and social media several times a day,
Yeah.
if not once a day. And then there's others that like are the one woman man show and they
Yes.
have much less time. So would you say that there's a specific frequency that you would recommend, or is it just more about consistency? It's like pick one and stick with it, or it's actually this other rigor?
I would tend to agree with you that I think it's just more about consistency
Okay.
and based on what your capacity is. So
Okay.
I remember working for an organization where we would sort of gather all of our content and then distribute it throughout the year.
Yep.
Okay.
Batch baby.
So let's just start with, 12 months in a year.
Yep.
So if you are an organization that's providing direct service, so you have clients or you have patients or you have, members of the community that you're serving, you're going to want to be on the ground working with staff to determine who those success stories are and who would be comfortable sharing their story in a public way.
Okay.
And you'll want to, take the time, of course, to work with them on what their story is and what they're comfortable sharing. And then take some time to decide, whether you want to have photos that accompany a written story, or perhaps you want to do video testimonials, which is also just a fantastic way to spread the impact.
Yeah.
And then, so spend some time sort of recording those, and then you can decide what story, lines up with which month. Perhaps there's, I worked for a healthcare organization, and suppose it was, breast cancer awareness month.
Right.
So it would be great to align a story of a woman getting care for that, or preventative care, and sharing that during that month. So you can be strategic.
Okay.
And figure out what's going to serve the organization's needs. Is that helpful?
So helpful. And I think, like everything, consistency, but actually like long-term planning is so critical for this not being overwhelming, for you to be strategic, for you to map it all out. Yeah, I know I say that stuff all the time, but maybe people will hear it extra coming from you.
Yeah. And also use your interns when possible, right? So
yes.
It's actually a really inspiring and fulfilling project to give an intern.
Yeah.
Is really empowering them to sit down and get the stories and get those great photo assets and whatnot. It's really a great way to use an intern or a volunteer.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I know we are kind of coming up on time. So I'm gonna ask you, let me see, one more question, I think, and then we'll wrap it up. I know. So again, a lot of the people in this audience of mine, thank you for being here, are small shops. They do not have a lot of team support, if any support. How do you feel, or how do you recommend they use either their volunteer base, their board of directors, any kind of layers outside of themselves to support any kind of public relation story sharing effort?
So that's a fantastic question, because the truth is, before you start working with the media, you're going to want to have some spokespeople that are teed up and ready to go. So a lot of the work with public relations is preparation. So as we talked about, you're going to prepare all of your written documents, your fact sheets. You're going to have your Excel list of all the different members of the media that you want to reach out to. But you also, before you're doing pitching, you want to make sure that people in your organization that you've identified are ready, are media trained, have their story, have their narrative, right? And everyone's on the same page. So likely that might be the CEO or president of your organization. Perhaps it's a board member that you think would be just a great spokesperson that's been really involved in the organization for a long time. Maybe they were a founder.
Yeah. Okay. Good idea.
Perhaps there's, if volunteers play a large role in your organization, perhaps there's a volunteer that's also been involved and can really represent the organization well.
Mm-hmm.
And then some people that have been served by the organization.
Yep.
So having sort of your your like little arsenal of people, and it doesn't have to be extensive, but you do need to feel confident that they can take direction, that you can sit down with them, that you can sort of practice answering questions and talking about the organization, and everyone is on the same page in terms of how you talk about your mission, you talk about your impact.
Totally. Going back to like your fact sheet that you've already somewhat produced, it sounds like there's either that document that you share around with people so everyone has the same talking points, or a version of that you spread out so that everyone, like you said, is on the same page about your key important statistics, 2 or 3 stories you want to be sharing, as well as like what the mission statement is. I've been a part of many organizations where different board members are saying different things, and you're kind of like, no, we have one mission statement. So having something like that for them to all work off of.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. This was, I literally just learned like 7 things. So I hope that this was helpful. I'm actually like playing in my head that I think I want to put like a little bundle together for people. Like maybe it's a sample or a template for some sort of like media alert. Maybe it's a press release template. And then maybe it's like a link to a Google Doc that has something where people can build their archive of media contacts.
Yes.
Maybe I'll put something together and you can run them through me, and then people can get it if they want. I feel like that might be a helpful start.
Yeah.
Amy, where can people find you and hear more information about all the wisdom you have?
Thanks, Jess. You can find me on LinkedIn, Amy Rosenfeld. That is my LinkedIn.
Perfect.
And please don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions. I love talking to people about this stuff. It's my passion.
You're so good at it. Oh my gosh, I should have tapped you earlier. This is so helpful. I'm so grateful for you for doing this. Really, you're such a friend and a star. And
thanks, Jess.
Okay, you guys. Thanks, Amy. We'll see her on. And until next time.
Wasn't that so good? I don't know about you guys, but I literally took 10 pages of notes and knew 11 more things than I knew when I started the conversation with Amy. So if you are interested, please go ahead and find Amy on LinkedIn. She's at Amy Rosenfeld there, and check out the link below because there's some good freebies for you to get your hands on to get you started on all things public relations. Enjoy!